Hi, and thanks for listening to the eSpecial Needs podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Blanner. This podcast was created as an endeavor of eSpecial Needs to help you build your village. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and we want to give you all the resources necessary to do that. From OTs to teachers to therapists, we want to give you the best information to help you be a better parent, a better teacher to your students, or a better OT to your clients. On today's episode of the eSpecial Needs podcast, we have Kelly Behlmann. She's the founder of the Disabled Athletes Sports Association in St. Louis, Missouri. I'll let her introduce herself.
Okay, so I'm Kelly Behlmann. I'm a physical therapist, and I started Disabled Athletes Sports Association 21 years ago.
Did I say it right? Is it Dasa?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. So why did you start Dasa?
So as a therapist, I had started out in neuro rehab, working with spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries. And that's where I was introduced to clients that were athletes before their injuries. And then, they become injured, they become paraplegics, quadriplegics, and they feel like there's nothing left for them to do. I felt like there was a better way to show them that there's life after injury. So let's get out and roll around the neighborhood in your chair. Then when I started in pediatrics, I moved on to working with kiddos. I felt like the parents and the health system wanted these kids fixed. So everybody needed to be fixed. We were doing surgery, we were doing therapy, we were embracing them. Instead of just embracing their abilities, we were just concentrating on their disability. The kids weren't happy because they're spending all day long in a therapist, and then sometimes in the evenings in a therapist, and sometimes the weekends in a therapist. But their siblings got to go to sport activities. And I knew that for me, growing up as an athlete, I got to set my own goals. I got to play with my peers. I got to do cool things at school. So I thought maybe this would be a different modality, a therapeutic modality, but something that would encourage and engage the kids to use their own abilities rather than whatever the medical world wanted them to do. I'm kind of a cart before the horse person, not great with authority. Whatever's good for the kiddos seemed to be good for me. So, and a big dreamer. So I just got online to form a nonprofit. Wasn't really planning on doing anything, just except maybe playing basketball in my driveway, something very simple. I put my grandparents, my mom, and neighbors down as board members and got the nonprofit 2 weeks later and started playing wheelchair basketball in my driveway with 5 of my kids that were clients of mine. We moved from there to a schoolyard and then into the school. After about 6 months, one of them said they wanted to learn how to swim. So, okay, let's go to the Y. So we all went swimming. And here we are today, 22 years later. We have about 400 athletes from all over the state, the Midwest. We're recognized as the Paralympic Sport Club. So we're recognized by the USOC, the United States Olympic Committee, as the Paralympic Sport Club for the St. Louis area. So our athletes, we start our programming as early as age 5 up through adults. And now we work with wounded veterans also. When I started the program, it was just for kiddos because I didn't really like adults. But then my kiddos became adults. So we had to expand the program. So that's how that happened. And then once we had our Iraqi conflict, we had these wounded veterans that were coming back. So then we moved on to also helping our wounded warrior population. We work primarily with children and adults that have a physical disability and that are cognitively age appropriate. There are many, many great programs in this community for children with developmental or intellectual disabilities. But those with physical disabilities never really had their own kind of niche in the sporting world or in the community because everybody just kind of considers them all in one group. We're able, they're disabled. Instead, we like to think of all of us as differently abled. And we all like to do different things and we all great different strengths. I mean, you might be great at marketing. I'm not. But so just because I have a disability doesn't mean that I want to play wheelchair basketball with everybody else. I mean, maybe I want to play the piano or maybe I don't want to play basketball. So to group all those kiddos together didn't make any sense to me. So those with physical disabilities are those that Dasa primarily serves. We serve year-round in recreation and competition sport. So we'll have, right now we're in the middle of a session and we have swimming 4 nights a week. We have power wheelchair soccer, sled hockey, adaptive yoga, archery, quad rugby, wheelchair basketball all going on right now. We do have several Paralympians. So our sled hockey team, we have 3 gold medalists from the Paralympic Team USA over the last 3 Paralympic Games are all from our blue sled hockey team. And our quad rugby team has 2 or 3 athletes that traveled to Rio. And our team coach was also the assistant team coach for the Rio Games.
That's incredible.
That's very fun.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's really not all about them being Paralympic athletes. It's really about the child understanding their abilities and then using those abilities to stay fit and healthy, and not as a patient, but as a kid or as a young adult or as a parent. Just staying fit and healthy, not because they're disabled, but because we all should.
Do you have like a mission or like a slogan just to like sum up?
Yeah. So our mission is all those with disabilities will be given the opportunity to participate in sport and fitness. Our purpose, or our philosophy, kind of fits under what we call MORE, which is motivational opportunities for rehabilitative exercise. Being able to take these kiddos and adults and put them in a sports setting, and still, for me as a therapist and for their families, knowing that it's still very therapeutic, but for the child and the young adult, knowing that it's something that their peers and family are doing, and it's just another sport. So we kind of fit under that MORE philosophy, just finding a different way to be therapeutic.
That's really cool, because it ties into like the last episode that we did about like ninja therapy, how it doesn't feel like therapy, but it's still like helping somebody in some way, shape, or form.
Sure, yes.
So that's really cool. That's a full circle.
Because everything we do in life is therapy in some way for all of us.
Yeah, Emily said the exact same thing, ironically.
So, the fact that we take our kids with disabilities and they become patients their whole lives is really kind of silly, because why don't we just include them in everything that everybody else is doing, and it's just as therapeutic? It's going to be physically beneficial. It's going to be psychosocially beneficial, psychologically beneficial. So Why separate them and make them patients when I'm not a patient? When I go out for a run, I go out for a run because psychologically I need it. Mm-hmm. Physically, it's great for me. So why don't we just kind of group everybody in that same group?
Right. And I feel like that kind of like putting people in those boxes of just being like disabled athletes, quote unquote, like it limits that ability to just kind of like
person.
They're just not, I feel like that would be detrimental to just like overall psyche, because then it's just kind of like this learned helplessness or like victimization.
It's exactly what it is. It's exactly learned helplessness. And then sometimes we get somewhat of an entitlement of the parents. From day one, they've been told their children won't do and can't do, but they've also been assisted a lot to the point where they don't know how to go out and look for their own resources because someone's always done it for them. But, their typical child, that parent goes out and they look for swim lessons for their kids, and they'll yell at the principal if their kids aren't getting what they need in school. But we've kind of environmentally or through the society have taught the parents to be dependent on what that doctor says and to be dependent on what that teacher says. If the teacher says this is how your kid's doing, then we just trust them. But I don't know that we do that for our typically developing children. So I think if we all just got to be the same people and be exposed to the same opportunities, the world would be a better place.
People who are different than what is considered the norm, and to integrate them into what we understand as like a normal social situation or just a normal situation in general.
And who's we?
Yeah, exactly.
And what's normal.
Exactly.
So, precisely. There's so many norms out there, and there are so many groups of we. Mm-hmm. And we hear about discrimination a lot in the community, but we don't hear about people with disabilities as part of that discriminatory policy or, things that are happening in our community. Or if you hear about companies do a diversity plan that they have, but usually it involves ethnicity or sexuality. It does not involve people with disabilities.
Right. That's interesting. I've never thought about that.
Yeah. If you look up a lot of diversity programs, it's all about inclusion of ethnicity and sexuality, not necessarily people with disabilities, because it's still just so much another subsection of the community.
So we're going to talk about the importance of physical activity and exercise for a child with special needs. So how important is like a daily physical activity routine for somebody with special needs or disabilities?
Again, I think if we consider somebody with special needs or disabilities equally different than all of us, fitness and daily exercise is very important, specifically even more for those with special needs because they need that physical input. They need that sensory input. But even bigger than that is the psychosocial input. It gives them a lot more confidence in themselves if you allow a child to just go out and be free and do an exercise plan or an exercise program or just play at the playground is much different than if that child is in physical therapy. And I'm a physical therapist, so I'm not dissing therapy, but when you go to therapy, you do a prescribed therapeutic approach. When you're in fitness or exercise, you're truly just playing or you're doing a team sport. It is so much more psychologically therapeutic than just going to a clinical therapy setting. And I think a lot of times with our kiddos with special needs, parents in the medical field feel like, well, they're in therapy 3 days a week, so they're getting exercise. No, they're getting therapy.
Right.
There's a difference between therapy and the fitness exercise piece.
Mm-hmm. So they don't, I guess they don't instigate that. They're not the agent of therapy.
Right.
Because with putting them in a situation where they can physically exercise, I think it helps them also problem solve.
Right.
Is another thing.
Yeah.
I'm not a therapist.
No, but that's true. It's true. It does help them to problem solve. It helps them to make their own choices. It helps them to exhibit their likes and dislikes. I mean, when you go to a therapy session, you don't really get to say, I don't want to do that exercise. I want to do this one instead. There's a prescribed exercise program. If you're just in a fitness center or you're out on the playground or you're playing with your peers, it's your choice and you're able to reach into your best abilities, not the abilities that someone's finding for you.
So can you speak a little bit more, maybe you have a story or an anecdote about maybe an individual blossoming socially because of sports in your program or anything like that?
Yeah, I probably have about 400 of those stories.
Okay.
So
That's good. That's a lot of stories.
Each and every one of my kiddos that happens for. We've got a sled hockey team with we've got about 12 young kiddos.
That's really cool.
Yes, it's very cool. And these are very quiet. For some reason, we've got 3 athletes on the team that are 7, 8, 9 years old, real quiet. At the beginning of the session, their parents would help transfer them out of the car and push their chairs to the hockey rink and lift them up and put them in the sled and put them out on the ice. And you can just see in the kids' eyes, they're like, how am I going to do this? And what am I expected to do? And how do I move my arms? It's because that first 10 minutes of before practice, someone's been doing it for them. But as they got stronger out on the ice and they're left out on the ice, it's like, this is my time. I get to play hockey right now. It's not the therapist's goal. It's not my dad's goal. It's just me playing hockey. That's where the confidence builds. And look at me move my arms. Look at me doing this independently. Look how my friends are zipping by. I can do this after I get off the ice too. And then you see them saying, I got this, Dad, and they transfer back into their chairs by themselves. They always could have, but it's just that learned behavior. I'm a patient or I'm, this kid with a disability instead of I'm an athlete.
Right. Now
that I'm an athlete, I'm going to get back in my chair and I'm going to go really fast to the parking lot. I'm going to beat you, Dad. Then all of a sudden this independence comes along because I'm a super jock and I can do this really fast.
That's so cute.
Yeah. And that stuff happens daily. Things I've heard from our rugby players. Our rugby players are adults. They're all quadriplegics of some level. And a lot of times we have newly injured young men and women that have just been discharged from rehab. And they've gone through rehab. They've learned the standard, how to transfer myself, how to push. I've gone through a bowel and bladder routine with the nurse at the hospital. But now I'm in the real world. What's next? You're on a quad rugby team. You're not going to have your mom come over and help do your bladder routine. It's not cool.
Right.
So we have guys that, load up in minivans and travel for a rugby tournament and you're all crashing in the same hotel room. You got to be ready for that game the next morning. And all of a sudden you got to learn to do your own bowel and bladder routine. You got to learn to get yourself dressed. You got to learn to, time effectiveness. If you're a quad and it takes you longer to get dressed, then in order for you to be at that game, all of a sudden you want to do it. You want to learn for yourself. It's a goal for yourself, not a goal for your caregiver or your medical practitioner. competition or it's just a goal for yourself to do very well and to be successful and show up on time for that game. A lot of our rugby players will say that that's where they learned to do their independent transfers. That's where they learned to get dressed in time to go to school, but it was for rugby game instead. And that's where they learned to do bowel and bladder routines, because when you're in a room with a bunch of other dudes that have one bathroom, you got to get in and get out. And so you can't wait for someone to come do it for you. Those are the types of things that are therapeutically benefiting our athletes. They might make it to the Paralympics as a quad rugby athlete, but the best thing is they've learned to be independent. They've learned to work with another group of people. They've learned to travel in the community. All of this other stuff happens just from telling them they're playing rugby. And the same thing happens with every kid that does every sport.
Right. It sounds like such an interesting catalyst to opening up so many doors of like possibilities and so many more like avenues for independence. So
advocating for themselves.
Right. That's another thing that we
walking or rolling into the high school now. I mean, we've got kiddos that have swam on our swim team for a long time, and now they want to be on their high school sports. These kids will go right in to the athletic or to the swim team. The first day where everybody, if you want to be on the swim team, everybody comes. You see a kid rolling into the chair, and the athletic director's like, "What is this?" And that child is now advocates for themselves and says, "So I've been swimming. I can still swim. It's nothing different. I'm just going to dive off my hiney rather than diving off my feet. So here I am." And that's what's pretty amazing, is that we're not seeing these special ed kids in their little rooms in the basement of the school anymore. Now they're in the school. They're all over the school. Yeah. They're integrating because they want to. It's their goal. They want to go see their friends on the swim team. They want to see their friends on the track team. Yeah. There's a lot of great stuff that happens from it.
It's like, oh, my heart's exploding.
You just have to come see some of our babies.
Oh my God.
And I call them all my babies, even the 40-year-old power wheelchair soccer players.
I'm sure they love that.
They're all my kids. So
that's so sweet, though. That's so wholesome in a way that not a lot of things are.
No, it really is. I was just telling somebody at lunch today that DAS as an organization is small but mighty, and we're official. We have policies and procedures and all that stuff, but we're really just one big, huge family. And if you want to come out and swim, then you just come swim. I mean, you don't have to sign up on time and have your online registration due and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's therapeutic for us, so let's just do it. Just go jump in the pool. Make it happen.
Thank you so much for listening to the eSpecial Needs podcast. To show our gratitude to our listeners, we'd like to give you a pretty sweet deal. Since this week's episode is about physical activity for individuals with disabilities, we have just the thing for you. Rift and adaptive trikes are a great and therapeutic way of helping kiddos get the exercise that they might need to thrive. Right now, you can pick up a free $100 eSpecial Needs gift card whenever you purchase a Rift and adaptive trike at eSpecial Needs. The e-gift card will be awarded after the order is processed. If the product is returned for any reason, the value of the gift card will be deducted from any refund. You can shop Rift and Adaptive Trikes at eSpecialNeeds.com.
So what are the benefits beyond sensory, physical strength, and endurance building that you've seen? I mean, besides like even, I guess, independence and more stuff like that. Like, do you see any other things?
Yeah, so it's just, just the whole picture. We know there's sensory progress or improvement. We know that there's physical improvement and endurance improvement. So you can objectively measure that, definitely. But the best part of it is they're just better people. They feel great about themselves. They, again, advocate independence. I can do this attitude. Some of our...
It sounds like confidence.
Just, increase the confidence, the self-esteem. Some of our kids will try things that typical kids won't try just because you let them, Mm-hmm. If we would just give more of our kids that have been labeled disabled, we give them more opportunity to show their abilities. They just look at you like, really? You're going to let me try this? You're going to let me roll down the hill and I might fall out of my wheelchair? And I'm like, okay, we'll put a Band-Aid on it and you'll climb back in your chair. But if you tell a kid that, they're like, wow, this is amazing. And they'll try things because no one's ever let them, we're always working on their broke. We're always working on fixing them instead of really encouraging, what's there. I mean, if you have CP, you're always going to have CP. We can teach compensatory movements and kind of help them out, but you're always going to have CP. There's not a cure for that. So why are we trying to cure CP? Why don't we just be really awesomely appreciative of the abilities that you have? And if you're breathing, you have an ability. I mean, we have a power wheelchair soccer tournament this weekend, and 100 people are coming into town to play soccer in power wheelchairs. Several of them are on ventilators and push the chair with head control. There's still an ability there. They're playing the game of soccer. So instead of saying, oh, that poor kid, it's like, what can we do to get you and your ability? Where are your strengths? And let's do something with that.
I'm sure it just improves also quality of life in a lot of ways. Quality
of life for that athlete, but also for their family. If you think of parents with the kids with disabilities and siblings, they have your typical siblings and then that kid, the one that's always going to therapy, the one that has all the equipment in the house. That child, no matter how much you love your child with special needs, I know the parents don't love them any differently, more or less. But there is that difference. That person is the one that, Johnny's going to soccer practice and Billy's got to go to therapy. Julie's going to gymnastics and Billy's got to go to therapy. Or a special team or something special. It's always very special. Why isn't it? It's just as special for the typical kids. So if we can get Billy swimming or going to gymnastics, the same as their siblings are going, then everybody in the family is special. And now we're not doing therapy and sport. Now we're just being fit and doing exercises as a family. We can get on an adaptive bicycle and go out to the park and everybody bikes together. And then we stop and have a picnic. Now we're doing a family thing. The whole family's involved.
When a kiddo first comes to you guys, do you find you are speaking more to the kiddo and trying to boost their confidence? Or are you also kind of dealing with the parent and saying, hey, your kid's not glass?
Right.
How much of a confidence boost in the parent do you have to cultivate as they enter a program versus the kiddo?
When an athlete or a kiddo first enters our program, there is that education piece. There's that gray line. A lot of times our kiddos don't even realize they have a different ability, especially the younger ones. I mean, 3, 4, 6, 8, everybody's running to second base before first base, and the kiddos don't even realize it. It's the parents that have been told from the medical world and the school system how special their kid is and how they're not going to be able to. So it's really educating them that it's okay. If you take that seatbelt off and you let them roll down the hill, it's fine. They will probably fall out. But your other kid did fall at one point too. So It's going to be okay. They're not glass. They won't break. And you know what? If they do break, your other kid probably got a broken arm too. So you can have CP with a broken arm. You can have spina bifida. It's not fun, but it's not fun to be the typical kid with a broken arm either. Yes, it's true. Really educating the families, trying to get them to understand that they're not as fragile as they're set up to be. Sometimes in our swim lessons, that's the scariest part. We have one young girl, sweet as pie, the whole family is. And mom came in with her first day of swim lessons, and she had a life jacket on and arm swimmies. So she had a flotation device on every organ of her body and every part of her body. And her mom was carrying her. Her mom had her suit on. And I'm like, wait, stop right there. First of all, you're not getting in the pool. So that child needs a little bit of separation from you. You should go to Target because you could use a little bit of separation too. We took all the flotation devices off and we're like, she's just going to swim. And the mom said, she can't swim. She can't swim. Her legs are paralyzed. And I'm like, she can swim another way. We'll find a different way. So if we already have the attitude that they can't do it before they even get in the water, let's find a different way. She might not swim like me, but I'm pretty sure I don't swim like you either. She's just going to swim a different way. So the first 3 weeks, Julia cried the entire time and probably went to the bottom of the pool a couple times, but we just pick her up. I mean, just blink. She's 3 feet deep. Not that big a deal. Mom sat on the side of the pool, right? Mom sat on the side of the pool, just so upset, but didn't stop us. And I don't even know if she was upset. It was more of just a happy, fearful cry. Like, she's doing it. It's kind of scaring me to let go, but she's doing it. Well, Julia now swims laps in the pool with no flotation devices, and she does it her way. We all swim very differently. She's completely independent. Dives in, swims, gets out by herself, gets into her chair by herself, pushes her chair by herself, does her own bowel and bladder routine. All of that, I think, is because she came to swim lessons. Because we told her that she can do this, and she showed her mom, look, I can do this. Back off, mommy. She is 8.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she was 5 when she started with us.
That's a really quick,
Oh, it is. You just, we kind of force feed them. It's like, here you go. When we had a dad once that I remember we were rock climbing, and I watched him for about 3 times in the session. He would pick him up out of the car, put him in the chair, push him to the wall. Pick him up, push him to the wall. And finally, I just stopped and I said, I don't know that Ryan will ever climb this wall if he's not able to get in the chair by himself, or he's not allowed to try to get in the chair by himself. So we actually spent the next 3 weeks working on transfers and mobility. Once he got to the wall, that was easy. He was up, done. But that wouldn't, in my mind, that wouldn't have been an accomplishment unless we didn't work with the whole procedure, the whole, from car to the top of the wall, not let's push my kid to the wall and say, I don't know if he's going to be able to do this. Well, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it either because you just pushed him all the way over here. So let him try to at least push his own chair before you expect him to climb a wall.
It sounds like one thing that you have to work on with parents is relinquishing control.
Yes, and that's really hard because people tease me because I say it's like I birthed all 400 of my kiddos because they're all like mine. And I promise these parents the world their kid will never get hurt. And it's true, they won't. No one's gotten hurt yet. But it's hard for me to give up my own children. They'll laugh at me. They're like, when's the last time your son was at camp? And I'm like, well, never. He's never gone to camp by himself. But I'll take care of your kid. So it's very hard as a mom and a dad. I mean, you want the best for your child. But those parents that can let go even just a smidgen start to see the abilities that their children do have. And great things happen because of it.
When it comes to talking with your parents, what's one thing that you've noticed that you have to keep saying to them about their kid?
That they can do this and it's going to be different. I think that's the hardest part to recognize. First, when I tell them they can do it, and if they're parents that have come from a medical system at which they've been told they can be fixed, if they come from that mentality and I say, we'll get them to swim, then I think the parents think they're going to swim like I do. And so it's first getting them to understand that they're going to swim their way. Their child has their own way of swimming, and that's okay. They don't have to swim with both arms and both legs and a freestyle and breathing from the side. And once they realize that, then we're usually in. So it's understanding that they can do it, number one, and that they're going to do it differently, number two.
So is there anything else in that kind of conversation that you'd like to speak to?
I think it is just really important that children, young adults, all of us play as much as possible. Play is fitness, outdoor play, inside play, moving. That is the healthiest direction that all of us should be participating in. Incorporating your whole family into play works. I mean, if you have a child that is not very mobile, maybe they can get on the floor with the rest of the family on the floor. I mean, we're all used to sitting in our chairs and standing and walking around. Well, why don't we get down to their level and do what they can do? And if it's scooting on your belly, it could be pretty fun. Let's do it. And, instead of having that child with special needs stand out, why don't we come to their level and do what they can do? I think it would be an interesting twist on what we do in our family lives and in our communities and in the school. And meanwhile, we're all staying fit and maybe not even staying fit, but just being active. Learn from there.
Yeah, because then it becomes, from my perspective, what I'm hearing you say is that it becomes, rather than an us versus them, it becomes kind of like a we.
Right. And instead of having the child with a disability conform to our world, whatever that is, why don't we conform to their world, whatever that is? I mean, why don't we give that a try for a change? It's not going to hurt anybody because they're not being hurt. It's just who they are. So what is the norm? Maybe, and that child who's strapped to a wheelchair, that's their norm. So let's everybody be normal, his way, instead of my way or your way. And we do discussions and presentations in elementary schools. We call them Ability Awareness Days. And we'll do a speech, presentation, or we'll bring in all of our adaptive equipment and let the whole school try it out. And that's pretty amazing because those started with the idea that we would come and teach them about having a special need. And I'm like, well, who's got the special need now? Because I'd like you to try to push in this chair and put a lunch tray on your lap and not spill the glass of water. So who's special now? I mean, that's their normal. It might not be your normal, but it's their normal. So, flip it up a little bit. Try someone else's normal for a change.
We have a phrase kind of here, or at least I have a phrase that's always in my head, and it's see the able, not the label. But I think it's something that people don't necessarily think about when it comes to individuals with special needs.
Right.
Because it's there's also this thing called the Person First Initiative.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that you mentioned that they're an individual before they have their special need, because before, like, it's an individual with Down syndrome, it's an individual who's bound to a wheelchair. Because before anything, they're a person rather than
absolutely
what they're defined by. So
and even deeper, in my opinion, is I don't like the word special. I mean, I know it's in our education system. It's on your sign.
It is on our sign.
But, you know, why is that child any more special than my child? Because they have extra needs, correct. But I think and I sound like Miss America here, but if we just all believe that we all had special needs, then they wouldn't be separated out. That group wouldn't be a separate special needs group. We really all have special needs. We're all kind of messed up. I mean, the world isn't fantastic right now. So I think then those that don't have special needs would be more welcoming to those that are labeled special. And, you know, it's really kind of silly. So special education. Shouldn't we all be educated equally? No child left behind. That means no child. Not the gifted one, not the special one, not the typical in the middle.
Yeah. So I
think we
should
all be having whatever our learning styles are. If your learning style is this and you need a augmentative communication, then that is your learning style. That doesn't mean that you're any more special than another child that needs to be taught in sign language or taught maybe 3 more times, or I don't know. That's probably a whole nother show. But
that might be, but that's kind of
I see that as like a table of people kind of really discussing that word special and how that's
a great idea. It's changing like the rhetoric around how we talk about different abilities.
Yeah, because I mean we're labeling them special, so they already know that. You know, it's like I'm special, I'm disabled. You're labeled. You're not. And if we, by labeling them special, I feel like we don't have highest expectation for them. And then therefore, they don't think they have to live up to their highest expectations. In our program, nobody's special. Or we're all special, however you want to say it. We have high expectations for everybody that walks in the door, the parents and the athletes. It's like, what is your best ability? And that's what we're going to work for. And no matter what your ability is, no matter where you are cognitively, physically, we want you to do your very best. But if you've been told you're special your whole life, that kind of entitlement thing comes along with that, you know? So I think we're setting some of our people up for failure by labeling them.
This has morphed into something like a bigger conversation.
Well, I know. I'm sorry. I just kind of get on my high horse sometimes. I just, I worked in the school district for a long time, and we would give a diagnosis, an early childhood diagnosis, and they'd move on to grade school. And you'd love to assume that the grade school teachers, and I love teachers, I think it's the hardest job in the world, but you'd love to assume that they're reaching and engaging each child equally. But that child that comes across as special, all of a sudden is already, their expectations are set by an IEP. This one's expectations are set by, he's going to get a college scholarship. There's all these expectations. This child, IEP, stops there. So if a year ago you didn't set the goal that you wanted, this is the expectation we have of that child. It's it. It's on paper. This is where we are. There's going to be some really mad people if they hear me say this, but I think that's true. I mean, there's awesome teachers out there, and they might think higher, but they're only mandated to think this high for that child. And the parents are only thought that their child, this is what we expect of them. Why don't we expect the same of them as we expect of every kid in that classroom? The best. Whatever their best is.
That's really cool.
The funding.
So the parent who's listening to this and is like, oh my gosh, like I want to work on confidence. I want to work on making my child more physical or making them more active. But they don't have access to a Dasa or maybe even a program locally. And we also talk a lot about isolation, especially parental isolation, and how they don't really feel like they can take that step towards starting this thing. Do you have anything for them to kind of take away and say, okay, maybe you don't have a Dasa or maybe you don't have a gym that's offering some programs, but what can they do at home to kind of start moving in that direction of being more active and building that confidence?
I would say number one, the easiest thing to do is being involved as a family, being involved as peers. So don't try to manipulate an environment to fit the child with a disability. Instead, for the child with a disability to fit your environment. Maybe we're going to fit their environment instead. If they're in a wheelchair, get them out or get them outside. Put something simple, like if you can get outside and you, instead of just riding on the path, the paved path, ride on the gravel, ride on the grass. Just that different sensory input is something different. We don't always see it because we're walking. We don't always feel it, but all of that sensory input is different. Get them out of their chairs, roll them in the grass, roll them in the crushed gravel. But really, at home, simple things like taking the cushions off the couch and building a tower. The whole family does it. Takes some effort, some coordination. Now you're building a tower. Now somebody has to knock the tower down. Do you knock it down with your feet while you're standing and you're challenging your balance? Or do you knock it down with your wheelchair? And how fun is that? Because your little brother just built a tower of all the couches and now you just ran it over with your wheelchair. Making just an inclusive playtime is the best way. If there's not an adaptive sport program in your community, try to get involved in the recreation or parks and recs programs in your community. Most communities do have an inclusion specialist. So if you want your child to participate at a YMCA or a rec center, there are inclusion specialists that work for the cities that will come in and help the staff understand how to help your child be successful. But again, I would emphasize that it's not just about your child. Put other kids in that child's setting. Get them involved. There is some way for other children, mostly children. There's another point. If you're working with a child, if we're talking about your child, have other children play in the same environment. Too many times when we're like in the school system or at home, it's the paraprofessional or the teacher or the parent that is playing ball with that child over in the corner of the gymnasium. Make everybody be part of that playing ball. And if it's not a ball, then it's a balloon. If they're allergic to latex, then you get something that's softer, like what do you call it? Balls of yarn, rolls of toilet paper. Rolls of toilet paper are fun. If anybody's listening to this at home, here's the most fun thing to do. Just teepee your house. It's awesome. Give every kid a roll of toilet paper. Start throwing it all over the place. It's very light. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's the easiest thing for somebody with the least amount of strength to throw or roll. They can roll it or roll off of their tray, or they can throw it. And then there's the pickup. And the pickup of the trash is very, quote, therapeutic. They're cleaning the house, but you're squatting to stand up, or you're reaching with your arms. There's a lot of movement that happens in teepeeing your living room, and it's fun. So teepee the living room. Everybody teepee your living room tonight. It's a lot of fun to do that.
I have to babysit
take all the cushions and the pillows off your couch, and then teepee your living room, and it'll be the most therapeutic thing you've ever done.
All right, that's all we have for this week. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. And a big thank you to Kelly Behlmann of the Disabled Athletes Sports Association in St. Louis, Missouri. If you want to follow Dasa, you can check out their website at dasasports.org. And now some legal disclaimers. The opinions and viewpoints expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions and viewpoints of eSpecial Needs, the organization. In addition, the tips and advice that is expressed in this podcast might not work for everyone. It might work for some, but might not work for all. Always consult a pediatrician, occupational therapist, or teacher before you do any of these ideas. Your child's safety should be a top priority. Please stay in touch with eSpecial Needs. Give us some support by following us around the internet. You can find us on Facebook at eSpecial Needs, Twitter at eSpecial Needs, and Instagram at eSpecial_needs. Thank you so much for listening. Keep in touch, and we'll see you next time. And don't forget, you're doing really great stuff.